You know, we live in this era where we've never been more, like, relentlessly optimized, hyper-connected.
Just completely drowning in digital noise, really.
Yeah, exactly. But then there's this incredibly profound, universally relatable paradox. When the world finally goes quiet, maybe you're staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m. or sitting in your car after a long day.
Right, or hitting that sudden midlife wall.
Yeah, there's this persistent, quiet inner whisper. And it just asks, why am I here?
And see, that feeling, that sudden existential ache, it isn't a glitch in the system. We aren't just, biological machines designed to consume calories and produce labor.
Right, there's more to it.
Exactly. We are fundamentally meaning bearers. Our consciousness is literally wired to seek a pattern in the cosmos. So that whisper you hear at 3 a.m. is simply your psyche demanding to do what it was built for.
It's searching for some kind of architecture to house our experiences. Which brings us to our topic today. We're doing a deep dive to answer that whisper, triangulating modern psychology, ancient philosophy, and progressive theology.
It's a massive journey to take.
It is. But before we get into the lofty metaphysical ideas, we should probably understand the physical machinery. Like, how does the human brain even process the concept of meaning on a psychological level?
It's the essential starting point, because finding meaning isn't just this esoteric exercise for monks on a mountain. It's a measurable psychological mechanism.
Which researchers have spent years mapping out.
Okay.
Yes, and they found that a meaningful life is constructed through 3 distinct psychological pillars. The foundational piece is significance, which is essentially the feeling of mattering.
Mattering in the sense of leaving a legacy, like getting a statue built of yourself.
Well, no, not necessarily a grand historical legacy. It's more about the deep conviction that your presence has weight in the world right now.
Okay, so more immediate.
Yeah, like when a mother comforts a crying child,
Mhm.
or a teacher sees hidden potential in a student, or even planting a tree knowing full well you will never live long enough to sit in its shade.
The brain registers that your actions echo beyond your immediate survival.
Exactly. And that gives your life structural weight. But, weight alone isn't enough to sustain a person, especially if life gets chaotic. Because I'm carrying a lot of weight, but my life makes no sense, I'm just going to feel crushed.
Which is exactly why the brain simultaneously demands coherence. The human mind actively rejects chaos. It acts as this narrative engine constantly trying to thread our past, present, and future into a logical storyline.
Oh, so it recontextualizes the pain.
Precisely. Narrative psychology shows us that without coherence, a painful past failure is just a senseless tragedy. But with coherence, the brain integrates that exact same failure as a necessary stepping stone that forged your current strength.
That makes a lot of sense. And the third pillar?
Purpose. Once you have the weight of significance and the storyline of coherence, you need a mechanism for forward momentum.
The engine, basically.
Right. And psychology divides purpose into 2 gears. You have your macro purpose, which are those massive missions like fighting social injustice. But equally vital is the micro purpose.
Like just being a patient partner today or a supportive friend this afternoon.
Exactly. Purpose generates the energy to push through the exhaustion.
Trying to synthesize these 3 mechanisms, it sounds incredibly similar to the process of building a house. Coherence is like the architectural blueprint that makes the raw materials make sense.
I love that analogy.
And purpose is the active, daily labor of laying the bricks. And significance is realizing this house will eventually provide shelter to someone else long after you've put the tools down.
The blueprint, the labor, and the shelter, that's a highly accurate way to visualize it. But psychology only builds the vessel. It builds the house, but it doesn't tell us what furniture to put inside.
It doesn't tell us what our blueprint should actually be based on.
No, it doesn't. For that, humanity has spent thousands of years testing different philosophical theories.
Let's follow that evolution because the answers have changed dramatically over time. If we go back to the ancient Greeks, Aristotle believed meaning was found in human flourishing, achieving your highest potential through virtue.
He drew a hard line against pure hedonism, arguing that chasing pleasure was just a hollow pursuit.
But Aristotle's model requires a relatively stable society to work, doesn't it? You can focus on civic potential when the world is orderly.
Right, but what happens when society collapses? When you lose your health or your freedom, his framework starts to fracture under that pressure.
So people needed a philosophy that could survive chaos, which explains the rise of the Stoics.
Exactly. If the external world is burning down, the Stoics argued that you withdraw your focus entirely to your internal response. You strictly separate what you can control from what you can't.
Your meaning becomes your dignified endurance.
Mm.
But then fast forward to the 20th century, 2 world wars, total devastation.
The scale of that senseless destruction completely shattered the idea of a rational, orderly universe, and this trauma birthed existentialism.
Thinkers like Albert Camus, looking at the ashes and concluding the universe is entirely silent and indifferent. There's no grand blueprint at all.
Right, he used the myth of Sisyphus, the man condemned to roll a massive boulder up a hill only to watch it roll back down for eternity.
The existentialist argument is that we are all Sisyphus. You're forced to create your own meaning from scratch, in total isolation every single day.
Yes.
I have to say, for you listening right now, doesn't that sound just utterly exhausting? It's like waking up and being handed a blank canvas with no paint and being told nobody will ever look at your art anyway.
Who wouldn't burn out doing that?
It feels like a recipe for modern depression.
It is an incredibly heavy cognitive load to carry, and it explains why we've seen a recent cultural pivot toward more sustainable, pluralistic frameworks.
Like the Japanese concepts.
Yeah.
Ikigai is brilliant because it decentralizes the pressure. You find meaning at the intersection of what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what pays.
It's balanced. Or the concept of nagomi, finding harmony in simple things like tending a garden or making a meal. You don't have to be Sisyphus pushing a boulder.
You can just be a person making a really good cup of tea.
Exactly. And these frameworks are incredibly healthy for navigating a random Tuesday afternoon. They reduce our anxiety. But, and this is a critical limitation, Ikigai is fantastic when the waters are calm.
But when you hit a profound dark crisis.
Right. When you lose someone you love deeply or face your own mortality, decentralized meaning shatters. A balanced career intersection won't catch you when the floor falls out.
The psychological house collapses.
It does. In our darkest moments, the human spirit craves ontological security. We need solid ground beneath our feet, even when the world is ending, an absolute anchor.
And this is exactly where philosophy historically hands the baton over to theology.
Yes. And if we look at the progression of these theological ideas, they aren't competing teams. It's more like an evolving framework, like a telescope coming increasingly into focus.
Let's explore that. It begins in the Jewish tradition with the Torah. We're introduced to the concept of humans being created in the image of the divine.
The implication there is that you aren't a cosmic accident. You are an active, dignified partner in creation.
Which establishes the ethical duty to repair the world. The mystical tradition has that stunning metaphor, the idea that during creation, the vessels holding the divine light shattered.
And the sparks fell and became trapped in our material world.
Right. So the ultimate purpose of humanity is to gather those shattered sparks back together through everyday ethical acts.
Every time you act with justice, you are literally picking up a piece of divine light and repairing the cosmos. It's a powerful external mission.
But the framework eventually requires an internal evolution too, which brings us to the Christian New Testament. The focus shifts from external rule following to a radical internal transformation.
Centered on agape, unconditional, selfless devotion.
Which is very different from our modern Hollywood definition of love.
Radically different. It's a love so structurally profound, it demands you love your enemies and serve the marginalized. The meaning of life shifts to actively manifesting a divine kingdom in the present moment.
Regardless of how you were treated in return. But if we're following this evolutionary timeline, there's a final corrective synthesis we need to explore.
Yes, the Islamic tradition, specifically the Quran, strips away centuries of historical dogma to present a distilled formula for human purpose, rooted in a concept called ibadah.
Now, in English, this is frequently translated as worship or submission, which unfortunately carries heavy, oppressive baggage.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like bowing to a dictator.
Exactly.
But that is the opposite of the intention. The true depth of ibadah is a seamless integration. It's a blend of profound knowledge, deep gratitude, and earthly stewardship.
It's rooted in absolute unity, meaning there's zero separation between the spiritual and the mundane.
Right. Praying in the middle of the night is biba, but so is doing your accounting job, honestly. Being patient with a frustrating child is an act of supreme devotion.
It's aligning your entire undivided life with the rhythm of the cosmos.
Okay, but I have to pause here and channel some rational, modern skepticism on behalf of our listener.
Go for it. If we're talking about an infinite creator, a force that is truly all-powerful and totally self-sufficient, why demand our worship? Doesn't that sound like a very human type of neediness? Like cosmic narcissism?
That is the pivotal question. And the paradigm shift here is massive. The reality is the divine doesn't need the devotion at all.
Wait, then why do we have to give it?
Because we desperately need to give it. Humans are homo adorans. We are worshiping beings by our very neurological nature. It's our core operating system.
So we're going to worship something no matter what.
It is unavoidable. And if we don't direct that worship toward a transcendent absolute, we inevitably direct it towards smaller, failing idols.
We'll worship our bank accounts, our intellect, our societal status, or our own insatiable ego.
And the problem with worshiping your bank account is that economies crash. If your meaning is tied to your youth, you are guaranteed to lose it.
The idols always eventually betray you.
And when they betray you, you're thrown into a bottomless existential void. This is why submitting to the infinite is actually the ultimate antidote to narcissism.
Because when you conceptually bow before the architect of the universe, you're incapable of believing you're the center of the world.
Exactly. It clears the suffocating air of our worldly anxieties. You aren't playing the status game anymore because you realize the scoreboard is completely fake.
If we're designed for this profound connection, it brings up an inevitable tension. Why is life still so inherently painful? If a universe is guided by purpose, why does it contain so much random suffering?
Because, according to this wisdom, life was never designed to be a hedonistic resort. It is a character workshop.
Character workshop.
Yeah. The challenges, the painful losses, they aren't glitches in the matrix. They are the highly calibrated conditions required for the soul to stretch.
It makes me think of muscle hypertrophy in weightlifting. You don't build physical strength resting on a couch.
Yeah.
You literally subject the muscle to heavy resistance until you create micro tears in the fibers.
The damage is the absolute prerequisite for the growth.
That's a perfect mechanical equivalent to what psychology calls post-traumatic growth, isn't it?
Yes, empirical data shows that people who endure severe crises often emerge with a completely transformed perspective.
The superficial layers of their identity get stripped away.
Under the heavy resistance of trauma, forcing them into a deeper, more authentic alignment, it's like kintsugi.
Oh, the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery with gold. I love that visual.
Right, you don't hide the fracture with invisible glue. You highlight the crack with gold because the breaking and the healing are exactly what make the bowl so valuable.
The fracture is where the light gets in. The psychiatrist Viktor Frankl, who survived the concentration camps, is the ultimate embodiment of this.
He observed that while we can't always control devastating circumstances, we retain the ultimate freedom to choose our response.
He famously concluded that a person who has a why to live for can bear almost any how. It's like a seed that has to break open in the dark dirt to grow toward the light.
That is a beautiful way to put it.
So how do we translate this why into reality? If you're listening to this on your Tuesday morning commute, heading to a 9-to-5 job of endless emails, how do you anchor these lofty concepts?
We can look at the research of organizational psychologist Amy Wisniewski to bridge that gap. She distinguishes between viewing your work as a job, a career, or a calling.
And the specific role doesn't dictate the category, does it?
Not at all. It's your cognitive framing. Take a hospital cleaner. If they view their work merely as a transaction for a paycheck, it's a grinding, soul-crushing job.
But if they reframe it?
If they practice excellence, recognizing that by keeping a sterile environment, they are a vital, life-saving part of the healing process, they alter reality.
They turn a mop and bucket into visible devotion.
Yes, the mundane task becomes sacred action. They are picking up the shattered sparks of divine light right there in the hospital corridor.
The stakes for missing this perspective are incredibly high. We've talked about Bronnie Ware's work on the regrets of the dying on this show before.
At the very end of life, people don't regret missing a promotion.
No, they regret chasing endless, status-driven work at the expense of connection. They regret not living a life true to themselves.
Which is exactly the failure of that coherence pillar we talked about at the beginning.
Which points to the ultimate transcendent viewpoint synthesized from all these sources. We are not earthly beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a temporary human experience.
The physical world is just a bridge. You're meant to cross over it, not build a permanent mansion on it.
I find that shift in perspective to be massively liberating. Because if you accept that the physical world is supposed to be flawed and temporary, you can finally stop stressing over perfectly optimizing it.
You don't have to biohack your life into some flawless utopia.
Right. You can forgive yourself for being a work in progress.
It radically lowers your ambient anxiety. You walk through life with a lighter step. You know the inevitable bumps in the road aren't destroying your final destination.
They're just part of the commute. Let's distill all of this down to the ground floor. As we wrap up this deep dive, let's look at how you, the listener, can actually implement this architecture today.
We have two highly practical tools for that. The first is to actively cultivate digital silence.
Because of the relentless noise of the modern era.
Exactly. The neurological reality is that your brain's default mode network, the part responsible for building that coherence blueprint, only fully activates when you stop processing external stimuli.
You cannot write the architectural blueprint of your life while standing in the middle of a loud nightclub.
You have to carve out quiet time without a screen to actually hear the whisper of your own psyche. The second tool is practicing radical forgiveness.
And this isn't about claiming the moral high ground, is it?
No, it's a psychological mechanism of untethering. When you hold on to deep resentments, you are essentially running heavy, malicious background apps on your phone.
It drains your cognitive RAM. They say holding a grudge is like drinking poison and hoping the other person dies.
That's exactly it. You're wasting the energy you desperately need for your own purpose engine just to keep the memory of a grievance alive.
So letting it go isn't about absolving the other person. It's about closing the app to free your own battery.
Yes. And if you are listening to this feeling overwhelmed or feeling like you've strayed too far off the path to ever rebuild your house, there is immense grace in these traditions.
The system doesn't demand robotic perfection.
Not at all. The Creator loves those who constantly turn back. No one is too far fallen. You have the ultimate privilege to begin again with your very next breath. Your existence is entirely intentional.
If it's true that you are a spiritual being simply passing through a temporary human experience, what is one earthly flaw or frustration you are agonizing over right now that you could completely let go of today?
That is the perfect thought to carry into the day.
Next time you find yourself awake at 3 a.m., listening to the quiet of the world, remember that you are not broken for asking why you are here. You are just hearing the echo of your own significance. Thank you for taking this deep dive with us. Take care of yourselves out there.